I've been trying to tell you from the beginning, the police were wrong. We could have settled this whole thing for $1 and some training. And you that sit on the city council, or you that are stupid enough to run for the city council and think that you're not going to be involved personally in this kind of stuff, we're just getting started.
Been living outside of Philly, yeah, I'm so far away. I've been gone for more than a minute. Is the neighborhood the same? All the kids on the corner, California never had that thing. I remember a rich girl in the summer like yesterday. Philly, forget me not, forget me not, forget me not. Come on, Philly, forget me not, forget me not, forget me not. Come on, Philly, forget.
Well, we won. To God be the glory, but here's the thing. This is a strong opinion written by Judge Collins. And, what's the end game, somebody asked me. Well, the end game, obviously, is to try and get some correction done within the police department. Remember, SAHUARITA, we have a problem. Nobody knows how much money has been spent trying to have Deborah and our case thrown out, and how much money the town is spending on the Jellison law firm. Now, my next video, I told you, and I'll begin to explain this to you, and I'll lay it all out. The next video is going to be a long one, so if you're not interested in this case, don't watch the next video. And first off, let me tell you about this decision. Out of nine counts that we held against the city or SAHUARITA, we only needed one to get past exigent circumstances or to get past qualified immunity. So here's what we got, all right? The town council, they got a couple of minor things granted, but here's what was held over for the judge. Count 1, Fourth Amendment claim for false arrest, held against all officers. Count 2, Fourth Amendment claim for unlawful search against us. That was held. Count 3, Fourth Amendment claim for unlawful entry against the defendants, Frug, Heath, Woodrow, and Zamora. You understand? And when you get into the wording, I'll read a little bit to you. But this is a strong, strong opinion from a judge who sits very highly on the Ninth Circuit. I'm sure Jellison, the lawyer for this case for the defense, is going to try and talk the city into appealing. And, there's no appealing this decision. There's just, generally, if you think about appeals, they're a long shot. They're a Hail Mary. And there's really no case here. But I'm sure Jellison will try and talk the city into appealing, which if they do, they do. But I'll tell you what's wrong with that. Number one, there's nothing here. Let me continue. Count 3, Fourth Amendment claim for unlawful entry, upheld. Count 5, supervisor liability against Lieutenant Zamora, held. Count 7, state law, false arrest claim against the defendants. Count 9, vicarious liability against the town of SAHUARITA. And then the action was referred to a magistrate for remuneration, or whatever you want to call it. Mediation, I guess it is. All right, so here we go. Let me just read you some of the judge's opinions. Again, Mr. Aikens' assertion of his Fourth Amendment right is not. Mr. Aikens, remember I said, no, you can't come in unless you got a warrant. The newspaper, Dan Shear of the newspaper said, why didn't you just let him in? Are you kidding me? This is how dense these people are. They don't understand. A constitutional right is only as good as the paper it's written on unless people stand behind it. And here's the weird thing. The police should be the defendants of people's constitutional rights, not the other way around. In this case, I was the bad guy. They made up their mind I was the bad guy. And come hell or high water, they were going to get in my house. Well, guess what? What they did was illegal, unconstitutional, and they should be held accountable. And part 2 of me making this video is the fact that our tax dollars, hundreds and thousands of our tax dollars are being funneled into a law firm who does not have the best interest of these police officers in mind, nor does he have the best interest of the town in mind. I got news for you. Zamora, Heath, Frug, Woodrow, Jim Jellison did not do you any favors. He kind of sold you down the river by not presenting to the judge your individual actions. See, had he done that, probably Heath would have been the number one culprit, and then probably Fruge, Zamora, Woodrow in that order. But he didn't. Your own lawyer sold you under the bus on that one because he didn't say, well, Woodrow only did this and so only did this. And by the way, that reminds me, in my next video, I will show you what the defense is going to do next. I mean, let me repeat this. Against Mr. Aiken's assertion of his Fourth Amendment right is not a basis for probable cause or reasonable suspicion of a crime. Just because I didn't let him in it's not a crime. Also, defendant officers were able to see and speak to Mrs. Aiken before they breached the front door. Zamora's speculation that Mrs. Aiken might require aid or that there were weapons in the home without more does not establish exigent circumstances. Are you hearing this, boys? Does not establish exigent circumstances. Then it says, it's a case called Suarez. The evidence existed and might be destroyed, fails to show exigent circumstances. There was no evidence being destroyed. Defendant's arguments against Zamora's liability are the same as those discussed as above the defendant officers. In light of the general issue of material facts, whether the entry, search, and arrest of Mr. Aiken was constitutional, and Zamora's undisputed personal involvement. Defendant's only argument against plaintiff's false arrest claim is that Mr. Aiken was not arrested, and the exigency justified a warrantless entry rendered the investigatory detention of Mr. Aiken proper. No, it didn't. So says the judge. Now again, I'm sure Jellison's going to want to appeal this, but how do you appeal? I mean, the judge could not be more clear. These were illegal acts by the SAHUARITA Police Department. Because there are genuine issues of material facts, whether an exigency existed and whether Mr. Aiken was subject to an arrest, and because defendants present no evidence of probable cause for an arrest, summary judgment on the state law false arrest claim 7 will be denied. This is what I'm telling you. I've been trying to tell you from the beginning. The police were wrong. We could have settled this whole thing for $1 and some training. And you that sit on the city council, or you that are stupid enough to run for the city council and think that you're not going to be involved personally in this kind of stuff, we're just getting started. Do you understand there is an anathema within the police department in SAHUARITA, Arizona? Starts at the top with Chief Nolan. But the corruption goes throughout the entire organization, and its nucleus is the city manager, who I will talk a lot about in upcoming videos. Let me read you one more thing. The judge says it is not necessary that alleged acts have been previously held unconstitutional, as long as the unlawfulness of the defendant's actions was apparent in light of pre-existing law. Okay, that's fine. So had the police done the right thing, it would have been okay. But here's what the judge said. The contours of the law on exigent circumstances and emergency aid were sufficiently defined in 2023, such that any reasonable officer would have understood they could not enter the plaintiff's home based on a single 911 call. What's the newspaper trying to convince you of? What's Kim Smith trying to tell you? So far it's been crickets, but believe me, this is a strong opinion. The only reason, and I'll get into Jellison and him being hungover at the hearing, I'll get into all that in the very next video, and I'll show you exactly what a creep this is, exactly where your tax dollars are being wasted, and exactly why this never should have happened. Why am I fighting this? Because if it could happen to me, it can happen to you. And if we don't put our foot down and start holding our police, our local police, and our local township officials, town officials, city council accountable, then they need to go. And we need to reelect others who actually give a rip about our tax dollars. They could not such that any reasonable officer would have understood that they could not enter plaintiff's home based on a single 911 call from a third party where there are no other circumstances corroborating that a crime occurred. This is why they couldn't arrest me. They had nothing to arrest me for. This is why they couldn't get a warrant. A warrant for what? We got a call. Well, what the judge is telling them right here and what they already know, that's not enough. We got a call is not enough.
Oh, we got a call.
You got to have some kind of probable cause. You got to have some kind of evidence. They had none. Look, there was no way we were going to let them in the house. My wife was seriously sick. And I know what happens when they come in.
Move! Put your hands where we can see them. Put your hands where we can see them. Put your hands where we can see them right now.
They take control, and that's it. They could stay hours. And anyway, unchecked power is power that needs to be checked. And that's what's happening in the Sahuarita Police Department right now. Unchecked power, starting with Chief Nolan and working its way down to Woodrow. And of course, I'm sure Lieutenant Eric Heath. More on him later. Plaintiff's home based on a single 911 call from a third party where there are no other circumstances corroborating that a crime occurred, where officers were able to speak with, see both the suspect and potential victim who had no injuries and stated she did not want officers in her house, and where there was no other basis to believe an actual imminent injury was unfolding in the house. The fact that 911 call concerned a suspect depends on the resolution of disputed issues in the fact their favor and against the non-moving party. More importantly, the court has already determined that when construing the facts in plaintiff's favor, defendants' officers violated plaintiff's Fourth Amendment rights against unlawful entry, unlawful arrest, unlawful search. The qualified immunity question therefore turns on the second prong, which is the right at issue was clearly established at the time. Mr. Aiken points out that pursuant to Bonavart, decided in 2007, the emergency exception permits law enforcement officers to enter a home without a warrant to render emergency assistance to an injured occupant or to protect an occupant from imminent injury. None of that was true in my case. But the Ninth Circuit refused to hold that domestic abuse cases create a per se. Just because somebody said it's a domestic doesn't mean that it creates exigency or an emergency in and of itself. And that's exactly what the police did to me. They got a call. Now, the call was a hoax, but we're way past that at this point. Here, defendant officers were able to see and speak both to the plaintiffs prior to forcing entry, and there was no evidence that anyone was injured. She was in heart failure, you heartless idiots. There was also no evidence that the plaintiffs posed a threat to officer safety or that there was a risk of escape or destruction of evidence. Also, Mr. Aiken notes, 38 minutes passed from the time the defendants first responded to the front door to the time that they forced entry, and nothing changed in that 38 minutes. Cops don't have a leg to stand on this one. But, just winning this lawsuit, I'm about change. There needs to be a change in Sahuarita. Somebody needs to be accounted for, and let's start with the hundreds of thousands of dollars that this town is, of our taxpayer money, that this town is currently paying the Jellison law firm. More on Jellison, more on his shenanigans at taxpayers' expense. This man literally has tortured one of our fellow citizens in this case, my wife. This man with tax dollars, Jim Jellison, is literally, unethically, and horribly treated my wife. You're not going to want to miss the next video. All right, we'll see you soon. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
This house is sure gone crazy.